What's up, guys? This is Gary with Fresh from the Farm Fungi, and I'm going to do a video today on how to cook gourmet mushrooms. So I always get questions on, what's the best way to cook these mushrooms, because not a lot of people have experienced gourmet mushrooms. So I'll just go through some of the varieties that I have right now. This is lion's mane. It's a really unique mushroom. It kind of has almost a furry, flaky texture. And then this right here is a king oyster. I like to harvest them a little bit sooner than this one because you can tell that the cap kind of extends and that shortens the shelf life a little bit, but this is the ideal king oyster. I picked this one fresh today as well as this one. They both taste the same, just this is going to have a little longer of a shelf life. And then this is a elm oyster mushroom, very firm texture. It smells almost like a sweet umami flavor compared to the gray oyster. So this right here is very dry. This was from a display block at one of my seminars, and I just took this home and I'm gonna cook it up and eat it. They're still edible, but it lost a lot of its a lot of the scent because it's dry. So one thing that a lot of farmers markets do is that they will leave out their mushrooms in the open. We strive to keep our freshness by preserving our mushrooms in these boxes. So that's one thing we do to preserve the shelf life. If you start to see your mushrooms dry out like this, and you want to look out for this browning here, that kind of is at the end of its life here. But for fresh mushrooms, what you want to look out for the freshest mushrooms is it's going to have a really potent, sweet, mushroom, earthy smell to it, and that relates to the flavor. Another thing that you want to kind of look out for is the firmness, especially with oyster mushrooms. You want a really dense, firm base. That indicates its freshness. It was picked right then because over time they'll start to soften up, which that doesn't really affect the flavor at all. But if you're looking for a nice firm or crisp texture, you want to make sure that you use a firm mushroom. For the oysters, these are really lovely mushrooms, especially the elms. I like the sweetness in these, and you just want to make sure that the gills are nice and healthy and the texture is firm and it's not too dry. The smell indicates a lot about the freshness on oysters. If it doesn't have much of a smell, it's probably old. And then the lion's mane. So this has a really unique smell and flavor and texture. And one of the things that I tell people about lion's mane is that you want it to kind of be flaky. So this is how the texture of lion's mane is. You can tell flakes apart really easy, and the inside is nice and white. That indicates the freshness. It's super easy to flake apart and not too mushy, and it's not very airy, which sometimes that will happen on a third flush, which it's okay. It's just not going to be as dense. Lion's mane, these will start to dry out really quickly, so that's another reason why we use our boxes, especially with lion's mane. It prevents that browning from happening, which it's totally okay. It's going to be like that in the wild, and usually after I leave this on the shelf, even after open air for 10 minutes, it will start to brown like that. But as long as the inside is white and it flakes apart nicely, then you have a good quality mushroom. Alright, so now that I went over that, the next important part about cooking with mushrooms is sautéing them. That's my favorite way to eat them. So I'm going to go ahead and turn on my skillet here. I just use a non-stick skillet, and I prefer butter as my cooking substrate. So I always use butter. It tastes amazing, and it gets up to a little bit higher of a temperature, so you can really get that crispy edge on there. But another substitute to butter is olive oil or vegetable oil or any kind of oil, really. You just want to be aware of the temperatures that the oil can reach. I like to start off on a medium-low temperature to cook out the water, and then kind of work it up to a medium-high temperature and really get that edge crispy. So I'm going to go ahead and heat up this skillet for about 5 minutes, and then I'm going to add the butter in here, and I'll kind of go through how I saute the mushrooms. Right, so the pan is starting to heat up. I'm going to go ahead and add my butter. It's really important to have an oil or butter so that the mushrooms won't stick. I also like using non-stick pans. It just makes things easier. So as that butter's melting down, I'll go ahead and start to flake apart my lion's mane. So you can see right here, this is a really healthy lion's mane. It's got, it's really delicate teeth here. I can smell the aroma. It's almost like a lobster or seafood like smell. So this is about the size that I like. It's going to cook down quite a bit. That's one thing that I like to tell people about mushrooms, is they kind of cook down like spinach. So you want to get more than you think you need. So I'm going to go ahead and just keep loading these on there. So right now it's at about medium-low heat, and you can see that the butter is still clear to white. That's a good indication. Alright, so it's starting to sizzle now. And my main goal in the first few minutes is to cook out that water. So you can start to see the mushrooms. They're going to start sizzling and browning, which is a really good sign. So I'm going to go ahead and let this cook for a few minutes. Alright, so after about 3 minutes, they're starting to brown up. So I'll go ahead and turn these all. Alright, so you can see that the water is starting to steam off. That's a good indication, and the color of the mushroom is starting to turn a little bit darker brown, but this is typically when I'll crank up the temperature a little bit. So now I'm going to turn it up to a medium high, just enough that it's going to really start crisping up the edge. Alright, so depending on how crispy you like it, that right there looks perfect to me. It's got a nice brown edge, still steaming a little bit, and that is going to be a delicious piece of lion's mane. So I'll just go ahead and pull all these off and put them in a separate bowl. Guys, so that's how I do my lion's mane. You can tell it's nice and brown and crispy, but each mushroom kind of has its own quirks when you're cooking. So for the king oysters, you're going to want to cook it a little bit longer on that medium low. I'll show you how I chop these up along with these oysters, and basically these mushrooms go great in a red sauce or a cream sauce, or if you get bigger ones, they slice really nicely for the grill. So I'll show you how I cut them up just to saute. I'm going to be making a mushroom Alfredo sauce with these, so I'm going to add the lion's mane to that as well. It's going to be a really nice, earthy, cheesy pasta. So I'll show you how I cut those up, and then essentially you just saute them the same. All right. So I've got some nice fresh kings here and some elm oysters. Like I said before, you just want to make sure they're nice and firm. So I'll go ahead and slice this one up to show you the inside. Really dense and meaty. That's a nice looking king oyster, very dense. So I'm just going to go ahead and slice it in thirds, and then I just chop it into almost cubes. Another thing I like to do with these is cube it up like this and put it in a miso soup. It has a really nice meaty flavor and almost a tofu-like texture, but with a lot more protein. So that's one thing I like to do with the kings. So I'll go ahead and just throw this on the saute. If you have ones with larger caps on it, that's okay. I just like to cut those off, and you can just cut the caps really thin, which this is how I do my oyster mushrooms. So they're kind of longer, thinner, and that way when you fry this side, you could just turn it over and it'll give you a nice crispy texture. So for the oyster mushrooms, it depends on the species, but the elms have a really dense bottom of the stem, so I usually cut those off. But yeah, so this cap is very delicate but kind of firm at the same time. So I just cut these in thin strips. And I'll go ahead and saute these kind of like that. So I'm going to finish sauteing these up here and then add them to a nice cream sauce and make my mushroom Alfredo. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I'm just going to show you the rest of the steps. It's pretty easy, just boiling pasta and then mixing in my cream sauce with my sauteed mushrooms. I hope this helped clear up any questions. Let me know if you have any comments about these mushrooms in particular or other mushrooms that I didn't cook. Another one that I always get is about the pink oysters. So if you pickle those, they'll stay pink, but if you saute them like this, they'll kind of lose their color a little bit and almost look peachy, but they still taste really good. Yeah, so I'm just keeping an eye on this, and I can show you one more time. We're kind of looking for this brown texture right here, and it'll take about 5 or 10 minutes for these guys to cook. But I'll show you the rest of the video, and mush love. Like if you found this helpful, and share or subscribe if you're looking forward to more videos like this. I really enjoy teaching about mushrooms, and I hope this clears up a lot of questions that I get about how you cook gourmet mushrooms. I feel like they're very versatile, and as long as you can saute them, it's really easy to add them to anything. So, alright, thank you for watching, and much love.